अब सीधे चलते हैं प्रेस वार्ता में, जहां रविशंकर प्रसाद कैबिनेट के डिसीजंस के बारे में जानकारी दे रहे हैं संवाददाताओं को।
आज की कैबिनेट में कुछ बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण फैसले किए गए हैं जिसकी जानकारी हम आपको देंगे। और जैसा कि फ्रैंक ने बताया, लास्ट में भारत के इतिहास में बहुत ही ऐतिहासिक घटना हुई है। नेशनल सिविल एविएशन पॉलिसी को हमने अप्रूव किया है। उसके बारे में विस्तार से मित्रवत माननीय मंत्री अशोक गजपति राजू जी और उनके सचिव प्रेजेंटेशन देंगे और एमओएस उस पर चर्चा करेंगे। मित्रों, आज कैबिनेट कमेटी ऑन इकोनॉमिक अफेयर्स ने पंजाब में खरार लुधियाना सेक्शन ऑफ नेशनल हाईवे 95 इसके 4 और 6 लेनिंग को मंजूरी दे दी है। इस पर कुल खर्चा 2069 करोड़ आएगा। द टोटल अमाउंट ऑफ कॉस्ट इज 2069.70 crores and the total length to be developed is 76 kilometers. ये अपने आप में इसलिए बहुत ज़रूरी है कि जो चंडीगढ़ लुधियाना टोटल हाईवे है, जिसका फर्स्ट ऑलरेडी चंडीगढ़ करर काम चल रहा है, उसके दूसरे लेग में ये काम हो रहा है और इसमें पूरे पंजाब की इकोनॉमी को, ट्रांसपोर्टेशन को बहुत ही मदद मिलेगी और लगभग 3,09,833 मैन डेज लोगों को वर्क मिलेंगे। तो ये हमारा मानना है। मित्रों, एक दूसरा महत्वपूर्ण फैसला जो कैबिनेट कमेटी ऑन इकोनॉमिक अफेयर्स ने किया है कि they have approved disinvestment of 10% paid up equity of HUDCO out of governments of India's shareholding of 100% through IPO route. आपको मालूम है टोटल पेड अप इक्विटी ऑफ HUDCO is 2,090 crores and 10% of that is going to be offloaded, disinvested. And the net worth of the company, HUDCO, is 7,800 crores. Therefore, it is a very vibrant company. We thought we are disinvesting that. Mitro, now I come to the cabinet decision. कैबिनेट ने आज एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण फैसला करते हुए जो पॉलीमेटेलिक सल्फाइड्स बिटवीन इंडिया एंड इंटरनेशनल सीबेड अथॉरिटी के बीच में एक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट हुआ है, जिसके अंतर्गत इंडिया हैज बीन गिवन द राइट टू अंडरटेक एक्सप्लोरेशन एंड डेवलपमेंटल एक्टिविटीज in the sea in the allotted area of 10,000 square kilometer. ये एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण फैसला इसलिए है कि ये जो पूरे पॉलीमेटेलिक सल्फाइड्स हैं, दे कंटेन आयरन, जिंक, सिल्वर, गोल्ड, प्लैटिनम इन वेरियस वेरिएबल्स एंड कैटेगरीज। तो इस कॉन्ट्रैक्ट के अप्रूवल के बाद भारत को यह अधिकार मिल गया है कि 10,000 स्क्वायर किलोमीटर में डीप सी बेड में इसको एक्सप्लोर करें। तो इंडिया विल बिकम एन इम्पॉर्टेंट सी पावर एज फार एज मिनरल एक्सप्लोरेशन अंडर सी इज कंसर्न। तो एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण फैसला है और आपको मालूम है कि इंटरनेशनल सीबेड अथॉरिटी इज ए यूएन बॉडी विच वर्क्स इन कोऑर्डिनेटिंग दीज थिंग्स। दूसरा, भारत की साइंटिफिक ड्रिलिंग इनिशिएटिव को आगे बढ़ाते हुए द कैबिनेट हैज अप्रूव्ड द इंडियन मेंबरशिप ऑफ इंटरनेशनल कॉन्टिनेंटल साइंटिफिक ड्रिलिंग प्रोग्राम। इसमें एक कंसोर्शियम है जिसमें एक हेलमोल्ट्ज सेंटर, पोस्टैम, जीएस, जर्मन रिसर्च सेंटर है जियो साइंसेज में, आपको इस स्टेटमेंट में मिलेगा। तो इसके कारण India would be in a position to get exposed to internationally renowned experts in this field of geo drilling and getting the benefits of that. मित्रों, आज 2 और महत्वपूर्ण फैसले हुए हैं ताइवान के साथ रिश्तों की मजबूती के बारे में। पहला रिश्ता हुआ है कि कैबिनेट ने एक्स पोस्ट फैक्टो अप्रूवल दिया है of the MOU between Taipei Economic and Cultural Center in India and India-Taipai Association in Taipai for cooperation in the field of agriculture and allied activities. ये तो एक बात हुई है. और दूसरा एक महत्वपूर्ण फैसला हुआ है, signing of air service agreement between Taiwan and India. And this has been approved between Indian Taipai Association in Taipai, India's representative office in Taiwan, and Taipai Economic and Cultural Centers in India. आपको पता है कि ताइवान और भारत के बीच रिश्ते बहुत मजबूत हो रहे हैं. And you know, this Foxconn company is coming to India in a very big way. And since I handle also electronic manufacturing, I know it for certain that India's and Taiwan's cooperation in the field of electronic manufacturing is also rising immensely. Now the agriculture activities and air connectivity is going to reinforce the growing nature of our relationship. So these two I thought I must convey to you. आज हमने एक और फैसला किया है कि इसरो और कैनेडियन स्पेस एजेंसी के बारे में आउटर स्पेस में कोऑपरेशन हो, उसमें एक एमओयू को हमने अप्रूव किया है. इसमें इंडिया और कनाडा के प्लान ऑफ एक्शन बनाएंगे, कोऑपरेटिव प्रोजेक्ट्स बनाएंगे. व्हाट इज इंपॉर्टेंट टुडे फॉर यू टू नोट इज दैट टुडेज डिसीजंस reflect upon deep sea exploration, outer space exploration, and also geo-drilling exposures. Therefore, India's scientific innovations in all the three fields is on top gear. That is important for you to note. आज कैबिनेट ने एक और महत्वपूर्ण फैसला करते हुए जितने भी आपके नॉन टीचिंग एंड पब्लिक हेल्थ स्पेशलिस्ट ऑफ सेंट्रल हेल्थ सर्विसेज हैं, इनके रिटायरमेंट सुपरएनुएशन का एज 62 साल से 65 साल करने का फैसला किया है. एंड डॉक्टर ऑफ जनरल ड्यूटी मेडिकल ऑफिसर्स एंड सब कैडर ऑफ हेल्थ सर्विसेज मेडिकल ऑफिसर्स टू 65 ईयर्स. ये हमने इसलिए किया है, जैसा आपको प्रधानमंत्री ने पहले संकेत दिया था कि देश में डॉक्टरों की कमी है, अतः इसको ध्यान रखते हुए डॉक्टरों की सेवा विस्तार का विषय विचाराधीन था और आज कैबिनेट ने उसको अप्रूवल दे दिया. तो दिस रिलेट्स टू द डॉक्टर्स एंड दिस ऑल्सो रिलेट टू नॉन टीचिंग एंड पब्लिक हेल्थ स्पेशलिस्ट अंडर द सेंट्रल हेल्थ सर्विसेज कैडर. तो ये एक महत्वपूर्ण फैसला था जिसको हमने आपको बताया. जी हाँ, जोशी जी को हिंदी में दोहराऊं कि इंग्लिश में दोहराऊं, ये बता दीजिए आप. मैं हिंदी में बोलता हूं. भारत सरकार में डॉक्टरों की कमी को ध्यान रखते हुए और स्वास्थ्य सेवा के विस्तार की चिंता करते हुए कैबिनेट ने यह फैसला किया है कि सेंट्रल हेल्थ सेवा के डॉक्टरों की सेवा अवकाश की अवधि 62 से बढ़ाकर 65 की जाए. और ये लाभ जो नॉन टीचिंग और पब्लिक हेल्थ स्पेशलिस्ट भी हैं सेंट्रल हेल्थ सेवा स्कीम में, उसको भी इसका लाभ दिया जाए. तो देश भर में जो केंद्र सरकार की स्वास्थ्य सेवा संबंधी पूरी कार्यप्रणाली है, उसमें एक स्थायित्व रहे, स्टेबिलिटी रहे, उस दिशा में प्रयास किया गया है. मित्रों, आपको मालूम है कि जब प्रधानमंत्री सऊदी अरेबिया गए थे तो सऊदी अरेबिया और इंडिया के बीच में लेबर कोऑपरेशन में एक एमओयू हुआ था. आज कैबिनेट ने उसको भी अपनी मंजूरी दे दी है. मित्रों, आज कैबिनेट ने एक और महत्वपूर्ण फैसला किया है कि फास्टर रिकवरी ऑफ बैंक ड्यूज को लेकर बहुत गंभीर चिंता होती थी. जो वेरियस एक्ट्स हैं उसको लेकर एक कोऑर्डिनेशन होना चाहिए. It was long felt by the banking and allied sector that we need to have an expedition in recovery of banking dues. तो उसके लिए Enforcement of Security Interest and Recovery of Debt Laws and Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2016 लाया गया था. ये बिल पार्लियामेंट में इंट्रोड्यूस हुआ था, रेफर्ड टू ज्वाइंट पार्लियामेंट्री कमेटी. आज इसमें कैबिनेट ने अप्रूव किया है. This bill leads to amendments in the SARFAESI Act, in the RDDB Act, your Stamp Act and all Debt Recovery Tribunal Act की रिकवरी जल्दी होनी चाहिए, टाइम बाउंड होनी चाहिए, एंड ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस को भी इससे सहयोग मिलना चाहिए. तो दीज इनिशिएटिव्स वेर पेंडिंग फॉर अ लॉन्ग टाइम एंड ऑल द चेंजेस इन द बिल हैव बीन अप्रूव्ड बाय द कैबिनेट. अब बाकी आपको जो हैंडआउट मिलेगा उसमें इसका डिटेल्स दिया हुआ है.
Thank you, Minister, sir. Do you have any questions on the topics?
You kindly await a structured briefing on that. Okay? It will be given to you subsequently. Yes, anything further? Friends, before I give the mic to my distinguished Civil Aviation Minister, मैं सिर्फ एक बात बता दूं. This civil aviation policy today history has been made. Since independence, India never had any civil aviation policy. And what is the core characteristics of this policy? Connecting the unconnected, serving the unserved. जो हवाई संपर्क में नहीं है उनको जोड़ना, जो हवाई सेवा से मुक्त हैं उनको सेवा प्रदान करना. ये इसके दो पहलू हैं. बाकी विस्तार से माननीय मंत्री जी और उनके विभाग के सचिव आपको बताएंगे. इस देश में 350 हवाई पट्टियां हैं जो सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के समय से बनी हैं और उनका उचित उपयोग नहीं हो पाता. बाकी मेंटेनेंस की समस्या है, लॉजिस्टिक की समस्या है, पार्किंग की समस्या है, फ्लाइट रूट्स की समस्या है. और आज मुझे ये बताते हुए बहुत हर्ष हो रहा है, एंड आई एम इंडीड वेरी प्राउड ऑफ माय गवर्नमेंट, कि 520 मिनिस्टर 25
whatever it is, it's been consigned to the
today a great legacy which was giving serious cause for concern. 520 और 25 मतलब हिंदुस्तान में ऑपरेट करने के लिए 5 साल काम करना जरूरी और 20 विमान जरूरी. That questionable legacy has been thrown into the dustbin today by the cabinet approval. So Baki, I leave it to Ashok ji and the secretary, and very quietly after a few minutes I will slip on, they will take all the questions. Yes,
thank you, sir.
मुझे जाना है केरल, तो मुझे फ्लाइट पकड़नी है. Kindly allow me that. Just go ahead.
A few months back we had all met in this very hall, and we had unveiled a draft civil aviation policy, and through you, plus also it was put in the public domain. And since then, a nationwide discussion has happened, and we have benefited out of close to 450 suggestions that came in. Then there were extensive interaction with all sections, be the airlines, be the airports, everybody who you could conceive. And we were blessed by the guidance of an informal consultation with a group of ministers also. So in this process of churning, a lot of journalist friends used to meet me and express a view that we are taking too much time. So anyway, we have been now arrived, and the cabinet has helped us by coming to certain conclusions. Now here I won't say too much because a presentation will be done by the Chaubeji, the Secretary of our Civil Aviation. Of course, the Civil Aviation Department, all the secretaries and everybody has worked very hard on this. But the centerpiece of it is the commitment in the BJP manifesto of making regional connectivity a reality. So we kept it as a centerpiece, and the whole policy has been worked around it. after this presentation, we would be taking questions from you. आप कुछ कहेंगे? Huh? So
before the presentation starts, just now Gajapathi said that some journalists are complaining that there is a delay in declaration of this civil aviation policy. While entering this center, 2 journalists accosted me and they said, इतने बड़े-बड़े फैसले अगर कैबिनेट इतनी जल्दी लेंगे तो हम लोग को हैंडल करना मुश्किल हो जाएगा. There are 2 perceptions. I thought it must be there.
I'll take you later.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. So, right now shall we go to the presentation first, and then after that we will take the questions. On to you, Chaubeji.
So just before the presentation, I take this opportunity to formally welcome the Minister of State for Civil Aviation, Dr. Mahesh Sharma ji. Sir, now over to the Secretary for presentation.
A very good afternoon to all our friends from the media, Honorable Minister for Civil Aviation, Honorable Minister of State for Civil Aviation, my distinguished colleague Mr. Frank Noronha, friends from the media, and my colleagues from the ministry and from the government. It is indeed a momentous moment for this ministry to present the National Civil Aviation Policy to the country through you. We will take you through the salient features of this policy. As already mentioned earlier during the briefing, it is the first time that this integrated civil aviation policy has been now decided and put into operation. There have been several attempts in the past to draft such a policy, and the last such attempt was started, for example, in 2004. There was Naresh Chandra Committee report, on the basis of which a draft civil aviation policy was drafted. It started in 2004. The civil aviation policy went to the cabinet in 2007. At that time, the civil aviation policy was referred to the group of ministers, which had about 4 meetings. Then in 2008, the group of ministers referred that policy to the committee of secretaries. And unfortunately, that's where the matter rested till the time that we restarted this process about 8 months ago. As you are aware, we put this draft civil aviation policy in public domain for consultation 7 months ago. And that's when we got very encouraging response from the stakeholders. We got very large number of comments. And after taking into account those comments, as well as the feedback given by the experts, we then once again went through this national draft policy. As Honorable Minister said, we also had the benefit of informal consultations with a group of ministers and individually with the entire spectrum within the government. And this is, at the end of it, we have been able to come forward with a policy which is indeed very, very progressive, and it will be a path-breaking policy as far as the quantum growth in the civil aviation sector is concerned, as I will be putting across to you now. The fulcrum on which this policy stands is the first bullet. This is the instruction which was given to us by Honorable Prime Minister. The flying is treated as something which belongs to the rich. Honorable Prime Minister said that we must prepare a policy which will make it possible for an ordinary Indian to start flying. This was the direction which he has given to us, and I'm happy that we have been able to weave a policy which will fulfill this directive. Apart from the requirement of taking flying to masses, the policy also addresses other issues. For example, we are proposing to create an ecosystem which will promote tourism, because as you are aware, tourism and flying go hand in hand. It will lead to tremendous growth in employment generation, and it will also lead to a balanced regional growth, because there are very many airports and airstrips which are in comparatively backward parts of the country, which will then get revived. This will lead to regional connectivity, and of course, we have done several things in the policy which will lead to ease of doing business and transparency, which is the mantra around which this government functions. The policy covers 22 areas. These areas are already known to those of you who would have taken the trouble of going through the draft civil aviation policy. So these 22 areas have been woven together in a very integrated and harmonious manner, with a single objective, as I mentioned earlier, of taking flying to the masses. Let me highlight now some of those 22 items. It will not be possible to highlight all of them. The civil aviation policy itself will be on the website very, very shortly, but the highlights are as follows. As far as the regional connectivity is concerned, the policy envisages that the scheme, regional connectivity scheme, will be put into operation in the second quarter of 2016-17. That is the quarter of July, August, September. We will be rolling out this scheme. The most important point is that we are looking at an airfare of about rupees 2,500 per passenger for 1 hour of flying. Now here let me take you through a small piece of statistic. You may probably be aware that in our country, in the last calendar year 2015, the total number of domestic ticketing was 80 million, 8 crore. In our country, the middle class population alone is 35 crore. So it means a typical middle class Indian flies once in 4 years to once in 5 years, even though he has got a disposable income, which certainly enables him to buy a ticket at least once in a year. But nevertheless, he is not able to fly even once a year. He flies once in 4 years. When we started analyzing as to why this is happening, we came across two barriers. The two barriers were, firstly, the airport is not located close to his place of work or his place of stay. Obviously, no one is going to drive down or travel for 5 hours, 6 hours just to catch a flight. The airport must be close to his place of work or place of stay. The second barrier was that flying from a regional area normally will be expensive, and therefore that becomes a significant barrier. We had therefore to tackle these two barriers, bring them down so that the airport comes close to your house and the ticket is affordable, and that's what we have done. The way we have gone about it is as follows. We found a gold mine of 350 unused airstrips and airports, which, as was mentioned earlier, were built during and after the Second World War. In fact, at many of these airports and airstrips, there was absolutely no activity, so much so that the cattle used to grow there. Now today, if we have to go and acquire land through the Land Acquisition Act for creating an infrastructure of 350 airports in our country, it will take a very, very long time. It will require lakhs of acres to be acquired, and it will be a humongous task. But here was a gold mine which was right sitting there. Therefore, the first thing that we decided was that we must attempt to revive these dormant airports and airstrips so that the airport comes close to your house. That was the first thing. That's what is indicated here. Now, obviously, we are not going to simply go out and start reviving all the airports irrespective of the demand. Therefore, the revival of the airports in a phased manner will be demand-driven, meaning thereby that where the state governments, where the requirements of tourism, where the requirements of airlines indicate that yes, this is an airport which needs to be revived, then such airports based on demand will be revived. Then viability gap funding will be provided, and I'll come to that little later. You will find that in order to bring down the cost of flying to 2,500 rupees per hour of flying, it is necessary to give large number of incentives. Otherwise, the cost will remain very, very high. And those incentives are, there will be no airport charges, no landing, no parking, no navigation charges at the airports which are connecting for the planes which are connecting an unserved airport with a served airport. There will be no such charges. There will be a reduced service tax initially, where 90% abatement is given, which means only on 10% value of the ticket, the service tax will be charged. The effective service tax, therefore, comes to about 1.2%. So the service tax on tickets will be about a little more than 1%. The excise duty on aviation turbine fuel, which is picked up at the unserved airport, will be just 2%. So the idea is to bring down all the costs due to taxation. The state government will provide police and fire services free of cost. As you are aware, each of these items add to the cost of the airport, thereby adding to the cost of the flying. So these are the concessions which will be given. And for this purpose, the last bullet, as you see here, the states will be required to bring down the VAT on ATF to 1%. Today, you may be aware that VAT ranges from 4% to 29%. It's a very, very high VAT rate. Delhi Airport, for example, has got a VAT on ATF of 25%. And you can imagine the incidence of the taxation from the fact that fuel cost accounts for nearly half of the cost of the ticket. And on that, if you are going to impose a 25% VAT, that makes the cost of the ticket very significant. So the idea is reduce VAT on ATF, reduce excise duty on ATF, reduce service tax on the tickets, reduce the landing parking charges and airport charges. By even after doing all this, the fact is that the price of the ticket will not come down to 2,500 rupees per hour of flying. Therefore, we would be required to give some kind of a viability gap funding in order to bring it down to rupees 2,500 per hour of flying. And this is what we are committed to do. This amount of 2,500 is an indicative amount around which the entire template is being woven. For this purpose, we will be creating, as you can see in the second main bullet, we'll be creating a regional connectivity fund, which will be put through by way of a small levy, a very, very small levy per departure only on the domestic flights, but excluding the flights which cater to Northeast and island territories and so on and so forth. And the viability gap funding, which will be provided to the airlines, that viability gap funding will be shared in the ratio of 80-20 between the government of India and the state government. In the case of northeastern states, it will be 90-10. The next significant item to which I would draw your attention is the route dispersal guidelines. These guidelines were framed in 1994 with the objective that any airline which is wanting to fly on the main trunk routes, that airline should also be required by way of internal cross-subsidization to fly on some of the Tier 2, Tier 3 cities as well. And the requirement is that if you are flying on the 12 trunk routes, then you must also start flying 50% of that capacity on the on the other cities other than the trunk routes, which connect, for example, the capital cities of the states. Then another 10% of those trunk routes capacities must be deployed on flights going to and from the northeastern region and the island territories. And 1% of that capacity must be deployed within the northeast and the island territories. This is what the route dispersal guideline is all about. However, the selection of these 12 trunk routes was not done in a transparent manner. So what we have done is we have put a transparent methodology here. The category 1 trunk routes will be rationalized based on the 3 criteria, namely, it should cover a distance of more than 700 kilometers. The average passenger load factor should be 70%, and the annual traffic on that route should be 5 lakh passengers. The routes which meet this requirement will be considered as the category 1 route. Today, as against 12 of those routes, when we did this analysis, we found that 8 new routes get added to this 12 routes, and 2 of the existing routes go out. So the net increase is 6, and therefore 12 becomes 18 routes. Now, because 12 becomes 18, because the base becomes bigger, therefore to that extent, the airlines will be required to serve In percentage term, percentage remains the same, but in number of flights, they will be required to provide more flights to the northeast, to the island territories, and so on and so forth. So that is one significant change which has been done. For category 3, it has been brought down from 50 to 35, because you would remember, as I mentioned earlier, the regional connectivity scheme serves a similar purpose. Because regional connectivity scheme is coming, we did not wish to burden the airlines too much, and therefore, while we have made that possible, we have brought down the percentage here. This revised categorization will apply from the winter schedule of 2017. The idea is we need to give sufficient time to the airlines to rework their routes and then to take appropriate measures for that. And this revision of the classification of the routes will be done once in 5 years. And any withdrawal or any revision in the routes in the northeast or elsewhere, they just have to intimate us. But at all times, they will be required to meet the RDG stipulations. Now, there has been this issue relating to 5/20 rule, as all of you know. This rule required that you cannot fly for 5 years. Now, this is something which was now considered odd, because we wanted the airlines to start flying quickly so that there is greater competition. And that is why the revised rule says that all airlines can commence their international operations provided they have 20 aircraft. Once they get 20 aircraft, they don't have to wait.
So that was a media briefing happening on the cabinet decisions. Some crucial decisions have been taken in the cabinet meet today, including the approval of the new civil aviation policy, which means that it will unveil a slew of passenger-friendly measures, well, of course, incorporating a series of passenger-friendly measures, including the capping of airfares at 2,500 rupees for an hour-long flight. Apart from that, other crucial cabinet decisions have also been taken, of course, about which the media was being briefed just a short while back. We'll get you all of that in the bulletin up ahead. Let's begin with the headlines.